August 3, 1936, Berlin, Germany. 14-year-old Anna Kowalski raised the Mauser rifle. Jesse Owens was 50 yards away, preparing for his victory lap. The crowd of 100,000 Germans fell silent. Anna had been trained for 6 months by Dr. Heinrich Müller's special unit: hypnosis, conditioning, mind fracturing. She no longer remembered her real name or that Jesse Owens had once signed her track shoes in Chicago. The shot rang out across Olympic Stadium. What happened in the next 10 seconds was buried in classified files for 87 years. 3 governments covered it up. 1 family carried the secret. And when the truth finally surfaced in a dusty basement in Portland, Oregon, it changed everything we thought we knew about heroes, villains, and the thin line between salvation and betrayal. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The echo of gunfire dissolved into the rhythmic thud of sneakers against pavement. 87 years later, Margaret Chen's morning run through Laurelhurst Park should have been peaceful. Instead, the nightmare followed her with each labored breath. Anna's finger on the trigger. The crowd's collective gasp. Blood on the Olympic track. Maggie's chest tightened as she pushed past the tennis courts, her 62-year-old body protesting the punishing pace. 30 years of retirement hadn't dulled her instincts. Someone was watching her. The black sedan had been parked across from her house for 3 days now. Different drivers, but always the same government plates, barely concealed beneath civilian registrations. They knew. Somehow, after all these decades of careful silence, they knew. Her phone buzzed against her hip. Emma's name flashed on the screen, and Maggie's blood turned to ice. Her granddaughter wasn't supposed to be back from Stanford until Christmas break. She wasn't supposed to be anywhere near Portland, and she definitely wasn't supposed to have access to the basement. "Grandma Maggie?" Emma's voice cracked through the speaker, young and terrified. "I found something. In your house. There are boxes down here with Nazi symbols. And photographs. Jesus Christ, there's a girl with a gun pointed at..." The line went dead. Maggie's running shoes skidded against wet concrete as she spun toward home, muscle memory from her FBI days overriding arthritic joints. The morning fog seemed to thicken around her, Portland's familiar streets blurring into the shadowy corridors of a Berlin safehouse she'd tried to forget. Operation Schwarzer Blitz. Dr. Mueller's experiments. The children who never came home. She'd spent 3 decades building Margaret Chen, the quiet widow who volunteered at the library and grew prize-winning roses. Margaret Chen had no secrets, no classified files hidden behind false walls, no sister who'd been turned into a weapon by Nazi psychologists. Margaret Chen was safe, but Anna Kowalski's sister was not. The black sedan was gone when she reached her street, which somehow made everything worse. Professionals didn't linger after they'd been made. They moved to the next phase of whatever operation had finally caught up with her. Her front door hung open like a mouth screaming silent warnings. Maggie's hand instinctively reached for the Glock she'd carried for 23 years in the bureau, finding only empty air beneath her running jacket. She'd locked that weapon away the day she retired, swearing she'd never need it again. Another lie she'd told herself. The hardwood floors creaked familiar warnings as she moved through her violated home. Furniture overturned, picture frames shattered, her carefully curated life scattered like leaves in a hurricane. But the real damage was downstairs, in the basement she'd sealed with concrete and lies. The false wall had been demolished with professional efficiency. Her filing cabinets lay gutted, their contents spread across the concrete floor like evidence at a crime scene. Decades of documents she should have destroyed but couldn't. Photographs, psychological profiles, and in the center of it all, the one image that had haunted her since 1936. Anna at 14, blonde hair in careful braids, blue eyes empty of recognition, a Mauser rifle steady in hands that should have been holding schoolbooks. Behind her, barely visible in the stadium's shadows, another figure watched, Anna's older sister, sent to stop her by any means necessary. Emma's Stanford sweatshirt lay crumpled beside the photograph. Maggie's phone rang again, but this time the number was blocked. She answered with the steady voice she'd perfected in interrogation rooms. "Miss Chen." The accent was slight, possibly German, definitely educated. "Your granddaughter is quite lovely. Very curious, like her grandmother. Where is she?" "Safe, for now. But we have much to discuss about your family's history. The documents you've hoarded for so long have finally served their purpose." Through her basement window, Maggie could see another black sedan pulling into her driveway. The past she'd buried was clawing its way to the surface, and Emma was trapped in the avalanche. "The girl in the photograph," the voice continued, almost conversationally. "She's still alive, you know. Dr. Mueller's work was more thorough than anyone realized. Anna never fully recovered from the conditioning, but she's been useful, as have her descendants." The basement door slammed shut above her. Footsteps moved through her house with military precision. Maggie was trapped in her own tomb of secrets, surrounded by the ghosts of an operation that should have died in Berlin. "You have 12 hours to decide, Miss Chen. Your silence for your granddaughter's safety. But understand this, Operation Schwarzer Blitz was never truly terminated. It simply evolved, and your family's participation is far from over." Before we continue this dangerous game of cat and mouse through Maggie's buried past, I want to hear from you. Have you ever discovered a family secret that changed everything you thought you knew about the people you loved? Drop a comment below about the moment your family's carefully constructed story began to crumble. And if this story is keeping you on the edge of your seat, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow we're diving deeper into Anna's transformation from Olympic dreams to Nazi nightmare. The line went dead, leaving Maggie alone with the weight of 87 years pressing against her chest like a physical thing. She stood motionless in her devastated basement, surrounded by the archaeological remains of a life she'd worked 3 decades to bury. The silence above her had turned predatory. She could feel them moving through her house, professionally methodical, touching everything she'd built as Margaret Chen. Her legs gave out, and she sank onto the concrete floor beside the scattered photographs. Emma's face smiled up at her from a Christmas card mixed among the Nazi documents. 20 years old, brilliant, majoring in investigative journalism because she wanted to uncover the truth that matters. The irony tasted like copper pennies in Maggie's mouth. 12 hours. The basement window filtered grey Portland morning light across images that should have been destroyed in 1945. Anna, at the Hitler Youth Training Camp, her small hands learning to strip a rifle while other children played with dolls. Anna, in Dr. Mueller's laboratory, electrodes attached to her temples, her eyes already showing the glassy emptiness that would follow her for the rest of her life. Anna in the Olympic Stadium, 3 days before Jesse Owens would make history, practicing her shot while Maggie watched from the shadows and planned her sister's execution. Maggie's fingers found the photograph of Anna's wedding day, 1952, a small ceremony in Michigan where no one asked too many questions about the war years. Anna in white lace, smiling with the desperate brightness of someone trying to convince herself she deserved happiness. Her new husband, Robert Murphy, beaming with the confidence of a man who believed love could heal any wound. They'd been wrong, of course. Dr. Muller's conditioning had roots deeper than love could reach. The basement door remained locked from the outside, but Maggie could hear them talking in muffled tones above her, professional voices discussing logistics with the casual efficiency of people who'd done this before. She caught fragments: subject secured at location 2, psychological pressure optimal, family compliance expected within parameters. Family compliance. As if Emma's kidnapping was just another data point in their operation. Maggie crawled across the concrete, gathering photographs with shaking hands. Here was Anna teaching her daughter Patricia to ride a bicycle, the same hands that had once been trained to kill now steady and gentle. Patricia at high school graduation, unaware that her mother's nightmares came from memories of state-sponsored murder. Patricia's wedding, Anna walking her down the aisle with the careful posture of someone always listening for approaching footsteps. And then Emma. Born when Anna was 61, a late miracle that had given her sister something pure to protect. Emma's first Christmas cradled in Anna's arms, while Maggie watched from the kitchen doorway, seeing her sister's face soft with the kind of love Dr. Muller had tried to burn out of her. Emma's school plays, soccer games, science fairs, all the normal moments Anna had been denied, lived now through her granddaughter's innocent joy. Maggie had moved to Portland to be closer to them, buying this house 3 blocks from Anna's retirement community. They'd had coffee every Tuesday for 8 years, talking about roses and local politics and Emma's achievements at Stanford. Normal conversations between normal sisters, if you didn't look too carefully at the way Anna's hands sometimes trembled when planes flew overhead, or how she flinched whenever someone spoke German within earshot. The footsteps above had stopped. In the unnatural quiet, Maggie could hear her own heartbeat echoing off the concrete walls. She thought of Emma's last phone call 3 weeks ago, excited about a journalism project on hidden World War II histories, the eager curiosity in her voice as she'd asked if Grandma Maggie had any interesting family stories from the war years. Maggie had lied, of course, just like she'd lied every Tuesday over coffee when Anna's eyes went distant and she'd mumble about dreams she couldn't quite remember. Dreams of running through crowds, the weight of metal in her hands, a voice speaking German in her ear while strangers cheered and flags waved in perfect synchronization. The truth was a luxury they'd never been able to afford. Now Emma was paying the price for Maggie's 30 years of careful silence. Somewhere in the city, her brilliant, fearless granddaughter was learning that some family histories were written in blood and buried for good reasons. That the woman who taught her to press flowers and solve crossword puzzles had once been young enough and cold enough to put a bullet in her own sister's head for the greater good. Outside, a car engine started. Through the narrow window, Maggie watched another black sedan pull away from her driveway. They were giving her space to think, confident that love would make her compliant. They understood that threatening Emma was more effective than any physical torture they could devise. They were right. After 30 years of protecting her family from the truth, Maggie would do anything to protect Emma from the consequences of that truth's discovery, even if it meant Operation Schwarzer Blitz would finally claim its last victim. The basement door's lock clicked open with mechanical precision. Maggie's head snapped up from the scattered photographs, her body tensing with muscle memory from decades past. But the footsteps on the stairs weren't heavy boots. They were the careful, measured steps of someone who had learned to move quietly through hostile territory. "Hello, Margaret." The voice hit her like a physical blow, soft, familiar, carrying the faint trace of an accent that 60 years in America had never quite erased. Anna stood at the bottom of the stairs, wearing the same lavender cardigan she'd worn to their Tuesday coffee just a week ago, but everything else about her had changed. Her sister's posture was different, straighter, more controlled. The tremor that had plagued Anna's hands since the war was gone, replaced by an unnatural stillness. But it was her eyes that made Maggie's blood freeze. The warm grandmother's eyes that lit up when Emma called were gone, replaced by the glassy, focused stare Maggie remembered from 1936. "Anna." The name came out as a whisper. "What have they done to you?" "Done to me?" Anna tilted her head with mechanical precision, like a bird studying prey. "They've reminded me who I was always meant to be." Dr. Muller's work was never incomplete, Margaret. It was simply dormant. Anna moved deeper into the basement, her steps avoiding the scattered documents with practiced ease. She reached into her cardigan pocket and withdrew a small device, sleek, modern, nothing like the crude electroshock equipment from the Nazi laboratories, but Maggie recognized the purpose immediately. The conditioning triggers were embedded so deeply that even I forgot they existed, Anna continued, her voice carrying the flat, emotionless tone Maggie remembered from their childhood encounters in Berlin. But technology has advanced considerably since 1936. A simple electromagnetic pulse delivered at the correct frequency, and suddenly I remember everything, every lesson, every mission, every purpose Dr. Muller designed me to fulfill. Maggie struggled to her feet, her arthritic joints protesting. "Anna, listen to me. You fought this before. You built a life, had a daughter, became a grandmother. Emma loves you. That's real. That's who you really are. Emma. For just a moment, something flickered behind Anna's eyes. Yes, she's quite special, so curious, so determined to uncover the truth. She gets that from our family, doesn't she, Margaret? The familiar use of her name sounded wrong in that clinical voice. This wasn't her sister. This was the weapon the Nazis had created, wearing Anna's face like a carefully crafted mask. Where is she, Anna? Where's Emma? Safe, for now. Anna moved to the overturned filing cabinet, running her fingers along the metal edge with disturbing tenderness. You know, I always wondered why you moved to Portland. Why you insisted on those Tuesday coffee dates. I thought it was sisterly affection, but it was really surveillance, wasn't it? Making sure the weapon stayed dormant. The accusation hit deeper than Maggie had expected. There was truth in it. She had been watching Anna, alert for any signs that the conditioning might resurface. But it had become more than duty over the years. It had become love, complicated and guilty and real. I was protecting you, Maggie said. I was protecting our family. Our family. Anna laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. You mean the family you were ordered to eliminate in 1936? The sister you were prepared to murder in the Olympic Stadium? I couldn't do it. The words escaped before Maggie could stop them. I had you in my sights, Anna. Clean shot, perfect angle. But when I saw your face, you were still my little sister underneath all their programming. I couldn't pull the trigger. Anna's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture. So you let Jesse Owens die instead. The world tilted. Maggie's carefully constructed reality, built on 30 years of believing she'd saved both Anna and the Olympic champion, cracked down the middle. That's impossible. The records show what they needed to show. Anna pulled a yellowed newspaper from her cardigan pocket, the headline visible, even in the basement's dim light. Olympic hero Jesse Owens dies in mysterious hunting accident, 1936. Maggie's knees gave out. She collapsed onto the concrete, staring at words that rewrote everything she'd believed about that terrible summer. No, he lived. He won 4 gold medals. He became a hero. He did win those medals, Anna said, her voice taking on an almost gentle quality. 3 days before I put a bullet in his chest during what the papers called a tragic hunting accident. Dr. Mueller's conditioning held perfectly. I completed my mission, just as I was programmed to do. The basement walls seemed to close in around Maggie. 87 years of believing she'd made the right choice, that her moment of sisterly love had saved an innocent man, dissolved into ash. And now, Anna continued, it's time to finish what we started. Emma discovered the truth about Operation Schwarzer Blitz, Margaret. She knows too much. Just like Jesse Owens knew too much. Anna's hand moved to her other pocket, and Maggie knew with sick certainty what she would find there. The conditioning never really fades, Anna whispered. It just waits for the right moment to bloom again. The gun in Anna's hand was small, modern, nothing like the heavy Mauser rifle from the photographs scattered around their feet. Maggie stared at it with the detached fascination of someone watching her own execution. After 30 years of nightmares about this moment, the reality felt almost anticlimactic. You don't want to hurt Emma, Maggie said, forcing her voice to remain steady. She's your granddaughter. You taught her to braid friendship bracelets. You took her to the zoo every summer. I remember. Anna's finger rested on the trigger with professional familiarity. I also remember you teaching me to field strip a pistol when I was 12. Funny how muscle memory works, isn't it? Maggie tried to reconcile this cold stranger with the woman who'd wept at Emma's high school graduation, who'd called her every Christmas morning for 8 years, who'd asked her advice about dating again after Robert died. The Anna she'd grown to love. Had that all been an elaborate performance? The woman you've been pretending to be, Maggie whispered. The grandmother, the widow, was any of it real? For the first time, Anna's mechanical composure cracked. Her hand trembled almost imperceptibly. That's the cruelest part of Dr. Mueller's work. The love was real. Every birthday party, every bedtime story, every moment of joy with Patricia and Emma, I felt all of it. But it was built on a foundation of programming, Margaret. Love was just another tool to ensure my cover remained intact. Then fight it now. Fight for them. I tried fighting it for 60 years. Anna's voice carried decades of exhaustion. Do you know what it's like, living with a stranger in your own mind, waking up some mornings unable to remember why your hands know how to kill or why certain sounds make you reach for weapons that aren't there? The conditioning doesn't disappear, Margaret, it just waits. Maggie could hear movement upstairs again, careful footsteps, professional voices speaking in clipped tones. Anna wasn't working alone. The people who'd reactivated her had backup plans, contingencies, probably surveillance on every family member they'd spent decades collecting. How many others are there? Maggie asked. How many children did Muller turn into sleeper agents? You really don't know. Anna studied her with something that might have been pity. The FBI debriefed you about Operation Schwarzer Blitz, but they only told you about the failures. The children who broke under the conditioning, who were discovered and eliminated. They never told you about the successes. The basement suddenly felt colder. Maggie thought of other families, other Tuesday coffee dates, other grandparents living quiet lives while something monstrous waited dormant in their subconscious. Emma found the full files, Anna continued, not just your sanitized FBI reports, but Dr. Mueller's actual research. 237 American children recruited between 1934 and 1937, subjected to advanced psychological conditioning and returned to their families with implanted triggers. Most of us were activated during the war years for various objectives. And after the war, we integrated. We lived normal lives. We raised families who never knew what we were capable of. Anna's smile was terrible in its sincerity. Some of us are teachers now, doctors, judges. 3 are in Congress, last I counted. We've been very successful at blending in. The scope of it hit Maggie like a physical blow. An entire generation of programmed killers scattered across America, living dormant until someone decided they were useful again. Children who'd grown into parents, grandparents, pillars of their communities, all carrying the potential for violence like a genetic time bomb. But why activate you now? Why risk exposure after all these years? Anna's expression hardened. Because Emma found more than just the files, Margaret. She found Dr. Mueller. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Maggie had assumed Mueller was long dead, killed in the chaos of Berlin's fall, or hunted down by Allied forces in the aftermath. The idea that he was still alive, still active, still running his experiments. He's been perfecting the work for 80 years, Anna said. New subjects, improved conditioning, better integration protocols. Emma stumbled onto his current operation while researching her journalism project. She thought she was uncovering historical crimes, but she'd actually discovered an ongoing program. So, you kill her to protect it? I kill her because she can't be allowed to expose it. Anna's voice returned to its mechanical flatness. Too many lives depend on maintaining the secrecy. Too many families who don't know what their loved ones really are. Above them, Maggie heard a phone ringing. 3 short bursts, then silence, some kind of signal. Time's up, Margaret. Anna raised the gun with steady hands. Dr. Mueller wants to meet with you personally. You're going to help us convince Emma that her research was misguided, that some truths are too dangerous to reveal, and if I refuse. Anna's finger tightened on the trigger. Then Emma learns firsthand what her grandmother is really capable of. The gun's barrel remained steady as Anna waited for Maggie's answer, but something had shifted in her sister's face. A micro-expression, barely perceptible, that reminded Maggie of the 6-year-old Anna who used to crawl into her bed during thunderstorms. The real Anna was still in there, fighting against 80 years of programming. You won't shoot me, Maggie said quietly. Not yet. Mueller needs me functional for whatever he's planning. Anna's laugh was bitter. Always the analyst. You're right, of course. He has very specific instructions about keeping you intact. She lowered the weapon slightly. But Emma doesn't have the same protection. The words hit their mark. Maggie could feel her composure cracking, the professional mask she'd worn for 30 years finally beginning to slip. Where is she, Anna? What has he done to her? Nothing permanent, yet. Anna moved closer, her footsteps creating hollow echoes in the basement. She's being held at the facility where Dr. Mueller has continued his work, a private psychiatric research center outside the city, very exclusive, very discreet. The kind of place where brilliant young journalism students sometimes suffer tragic nervous breakdowns when their research leads them to dangerous truths. The casual cruelty in Anna's voice made Maggie's stomach turn. This was what Dr. Mueller's conditioning created, people who could discuss murder with the same tone they'd used to plan a grocery list. She thought of Emma's laugh, her fierce determination to expose injustice, her stubborn refusal to back down from a story. Those qualities would make her resistant to psychological manipulation, which meant Mueller would have to use more direct methods. "How long do I have?" Maggie asked. "He's expecting us within the hour." Anna glanced at her watch with mechanical precision. "The drive will give us time to discuss your cooperation. Dr. Mueller has some fascinating ideas about family loyalty and how it can be weaponized." Maggie's mind raced through possibilities, escape routes, potential weapons in the cluttered basement. But every scenario ended the same way, with Anna's conditioning overriding any sisterly affection, with Emma paying the price for Maggie's moment of hesitation. She'd failed to save Jesse Owens by refusing to kill her sister. Now she was going to lose Emma for the same reason. "Tell me about the others," Maggie said, buying time. "The other children from Operation Schwarzer Blitz, are they all still active?" Anna's expression flickered, another crack in the programming. "Most of them don't even know what they are. The triggers were designed to remain dormant unless specifically activated. They live normal lives, raise families, grow old, thinking the nightmares and memory gaps are just trauma from childhood displacement during the war. But some have been activated, when necessary." Anna's voice carried a note of what might have been regret. A senator who opposed certain military appropriations suffered a heart attack last year. Very tragic, very natural looking. A journalist investigating defense contractors had a skiing accident. The conditioning makes us extremely effective at creating coincidences. The scope of it made Maggie feel sick. Decades of assassinations disguised as accidents, policy decisions influenced by the threat of violence, an entire shadow network of programmed killers embedded in American society. Mueller hadn't just created weapons, he'd created a self-perpetuating system of control that had been operating for 80 years without detection. "And now Emma threatens to expose all of it," Maggie said. "Emma threatens to destroy hundreds of innocent families." Anna's grip tightened on the gun. "Do you know what happens when the programming is forcibly broken, Margaret?" "I do. I've seen the others who've tried to resist their conditioning. The psychological damage is catastrophic. Complete breakdown, catatonia, sometimes suicide." Maggie thought of the teachers, doctors, judges Anna had mentioned, people who'd built lives and loved families while carrying this terrible secret in their subconscious. If Emma's research became public, it wouldn't just expose Mueller's crimes, it would destroy every family connected to his victims. "So the kindest thing is to let it continue," Anna said, reading her thoughts. "Let the sleeping weapons sleep. Let the families stay ignorant and happy. And let Mueller keep creating new ones." Anna was quiet for a long moment. Above them, the footsteps had stopped again, and Maggie could hear the low murmur of voices discussing logistics. Professional kidnappers with decades of experience, treating her granddaughter's life as just another operational parameter. "I remember Emma's first word," Anna said suddenly, her voice soft and distant. "It was gamma, her version of grandma. She said it while we were making cookies, and Patricia cried because she'd been trying for months to get her to say mama first." The crack in Anna's composure widened, and for a moment the real woman shone through. "I taught her to ride a bicycle in Laurelhurst Park. She scraped her knee and wouldn't stop crying until I promised the cut would heal into an adventure scar that would make her braver. She believed me because she trusted me completely." "She still trusts you," Maggie whispered, "and you're going to use that trust to destroy her." Anna raised the gun again, but now her hand was shaking. "Time to go, Margaret. Dr. Mueller doesn't like to be kept waiting. Maggie rose slowly from the concrete floor, her eyes never leaving Anna's trembling hand. The gun wavered between them like a compass needle searching for true north, and in that moment of uncertainty, Maggie saw her opening, not to escape, but to speak the truth she'd buried for 30 years. "There's something you don't know about Berlin," Maggie said quietly. "Something I never told the FBI. Something I never even admitted to myself until this moment." Anna's finger hesitated on the trigger. "Margaret, don't—" "I wasn't sent to kill you, Anna." The words tumbled out with the force of a confession decades in the making. "The FBI never ordered me to eliminate my own sister. That was my lie, my way of making myself the hero of a story where I was actually the villain." The basement fell silent except for the distant murmur of voices upstairs. Anna's face remained carefully blank, but Maggie could see confusion flickering behind her eyes. "I was sent to extract you," Maggie continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "The intelligence community had learned about Operation Schwarzer Blitz, about the American children being programmed as sleeper agents. My mission was to find you, deprogram you if possible, and bring you home safely." Anna lowered the gun slightly. "That's not— The report said what I told them to say." Maggie stepped closer, her hands open and visible. "I found you 3 days before you were supposed to kill Jesse Owens. You were staying in a boarding house near the Olympic Village, and I watched you for hours, trying to find some trace of my little sister underneath all their conditioning." The memory came flooding back with devastating clarity. Anna, at 17, her face eerily serene as she assembled and disassembled her rifle with mechanical precision, the way she'd hummed their mother's lullabies while cleaning the weapon. The complete absence of recognition when Maggie had finally approached her. "I tried everything," Maggie whispered. "Childhood memories, family photographs, even the song you used to sing when you were scared. Nothing worked. You looked at me like I was a stranger, and when I told you I was your sister, you asked if I was part of your mission parameters." Anna's composed mask was cracking, genuine emotion bleeding through. "I don't remember—" "Because they erased us. They erased your entire life before the conditioning, replaced it with objectives and targets and an unshakable belief that killing Jesse Owens was the most important thing you could do." Maggie's voice broke. "And I let you do it." The gun clattered to the floor as Anna staggered backward, her carefully maintained programming finally beginning to fracture. No, I completed the mission successfully. Dr. Mueller praised my work. Dr. Mueller praised your work because I handed you back to him." The truth felt like poison in Maggie's mouth. "I could have taken you home, Anna. I had extraction protocols, safe houses, deprogramming specialists waiting in London, but I was 23 years old and terrified, and when you didn't remember me, I convinced myself that my sister was already dead." The revelation hung between them like a physical force. Anna's face cycled through confusion, horror, and something that might have been relief as decades of buried memories began to surface. "You gave me back to them," Anna said, her voice hollow with understanding. "You saved yourself and sacrificed Jesse Owens." "I told myself I was being pragmatic," Maggie continued, the words coming faster now, 30 years of suppressed guilt finally finding its voice. One life versus potentially hundreds if other sleeper agents were activated. But the truth is, I was a coward. I couldn't face bringing home a sister who didn't know me, so I let the Nazis keep their weapon. Anna sank onto an overturned crate, her hands shaking as fragments of memory began to coalesce. The debriefing after the assassination, Dr. Mueller was so pleased. He said I was his greatest success, that I'd proven the conditioning was permanent and unbreakable. She looked up at Maggie with dawning horror. "He used me as a prototype for all the others, didn't he?" "Every sleeper agent created after 1936 was built on the model of your successful conditioning," Maggie confirmed. "The teachers, the doctors, the judges, they're all variations on what Dr. Mueller perfected with you." The sound of footsteps on the basement stairs interrupted them. Anna's training reasserted itself as she grabbed the gun, but her hand was shaking so violently she could barely hold it. "He's been controlling us for 80 years, Anna whispered, her programmed composure finally shattering completely. "Using our love for each other, for our families, as just another form of conditioning." A man's voice called down from the top of the stairs, crisp and authoritative. "Miss Chen, we're behind schedule. Dr. Mueller is waiting." Anna looked at the gun in her hands, then at Maggie, then at the scattered documents that had started this whole nightmare. "Emma was right to dig into this," she said quietly. "She was right to want the truth exposed, even if it destroys you." Anna's smile was heartbreaking in its sudden clarity. Especially then. The footsteps on the basement stairs grew louder, deliberate and measured. Anna's grip on the gun tightened, but instead of raising it toward Maggie, she turned toward the stairwell, her decades of training warring with her fragmenting programming. "Miss Chen," the voice called again, closer now. "Dr. Mueller has very specific expectations about punctuality." Anna's face cycled through micro-expressions, confusion, rage, a flicker of something that might have been hope. "He always said my greatest strength was my predictability," she whispered to Maggie. "But he never accounted for you telling me the truth." Maggie could see the cracks spreading through her sister's conditioning like fractures in ice. Each revelation had weakened Muller's psychological architecture, but the structure was still there, still dangerous. Anna was fighting a war inside her own mind, and the outcome would determine whether Emma lived or died. "We can still save her," Maggie said urgently. "But you have to choose, Anna. Choose Emma over your programming. Choose family over fear." The first figure appeared at the bottom of the stairs, a lean man in his 50s, with the careful posture of someone accustomed to violence. He took in the scene quickly, Anna holding the gun, Maggie standing too close, documents scattered across the floor like evidence of betrayal. "There's been a complication," he said into a small radio clipped to his collar. "The subject appears to be experiencing conditioning conflicts." Anna's laugh was raw and broken. "Conditioning conflicts. Is that what we're calling it when a weapon remembers it used to be human?" The man's hand moved toward his jacket, but Anna was faster. The gun swung toward him with fluid precision, muscle memory overriding conscious thought. "Don't," she said, her voice carrying the cold authority of someone who'd spent decades perfecting the art of killing. "I may be broken, but I'm still very, very good at this." He froze, hands visible. Behind him, Maggie could hear more movement upstairs, backup repositioning, escape routes being secured. Muller's people were professionals who'd had 80 years to perfect their contingency plans. "Dr. Mueller anticipated this possibility," the man said calmly. "Psychological fracturing under extreme stress. He's prepared countermeasures." Anna's finger tightened on the trigger. "Tell me about Emma. Where is she? What has he done to her?" "The girl is safe, sedated but unharmed. Dr. Mueller finds her useful for his current research." The man's smile was carefully calculated to provoke. Such a bright mind, so curious about family history. She'll make an excellent subject for the new conditioning protocols. The words hit Anna like physical blows. Maggie watched her sister's face transform, the last vestiges of programmed compliance burning away in the face of maternal fury. Whatever Mueller had done to create his perfect weapon, he'd built it on foundations of human emotion, and that was his fatal mistake. "He wants to turn Emma into another version of me," Anna said, understanding flooding her features. "Another sleeper agent, another weapon disguised as a granddaughter." "The next generation of subjects shows remarkable promise," the man confirmed. "Digital conditioning methods, neurochemical enhancement, genetic predisposition mapping. Your granddaughter's psychological profile suggests she'd be extremely receptive to the new protocols." Anna's composure shattered completely. She pressed the gun barrel against the man's forehead with surgical precision. "How long?" she demanded. "How long before the conditioning becomes irreversible?" 48 hours from initial sedation. "The process has already begun." Maggie felt the world tilt around her. Emma had been missing for how long? 12 hours? 16? Time became elastic and terrifying as she realized they might already be too late to save her granddaughter's mind. "But there's hope," Anna said suddenly, her voice carrying a note of dangerous calm. "You said Dr. Mueller anticipated psychological fracturing, which means he's developed methods to repair broken conditioning." The man's confidence flickered. "The repair protocols are experimental, which means he has equipment, facilities, maybe even reversal procedures." Anna's smile was terrible in its clarity. "You're going to take us to him? Now?" "Miss Chen, I don't think you understand the full scope of Dr. Mueller's operation. This facility has been developing enhanced subjects for decades. The security measures alone..." Anna pressed the gun harder against his skull. "Then it's a good thing I was trained by the best." She looked back at Maggie, and for a moment the programmed killer disappeared entirely. What remained was just a grandmother who'd spent 60 years living with monsters in her own mind, finally given the chance to fight back. "I can't undo what I did to Jesse Owens," Anna said quietly, "and I can't give us back the decades Mueller stole. But I can end this. I can make sure Emma never becomes what we are, even if it destroys you in the process." Anna's smile was heartbreaking and fierce, especially then. The basement exploded into motion. Anna's gun pressed deeper against her captive's skull as Maggie heard heavy footsteps thundering overhead, Mueller's backup team repositioning for an assault. The man beneath Anna's weapon remained perfectly still, his professional calm cracking only at the edges. "Move!" Anna commanded, hauling him toward the stairs. "One wrong step, and Dr. Mueller loses his favorite messenger boy." "You're making a mistake, Miss Chen," he said quietly. "Even if you reach the facility, even if you find the girl, you can't fight 80 years of conditioning with good intentions." Anna's voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Watch me." They climbed toward the basement door in a tight formation, Anna keeping her human shield between them and whatever waited above. Maggie's heart hammered against her ribs as she realized they were walking into a trap that had been decades in the making. Mueller hadn't sent his people to capture her and Anna. He'd sent them to complete the operation that had begun in 1936 Berlin. The basement door swung open to reveal her ransacked living room. Furniture overturned, photographs scattered, Emma's research notes torn and scattered like confetti. 3 more men waited in tactical positions, weapons drawn but not aimed. They couldn't risk hitting their colleague. "Dr. Mueller wants them alive," one called out. "Both subjects are required for the final phase." Anna's laugh was knife-sharp. "Subjects? Is that what we are now? Not weapons, not assets, just experimental material for the next iteration?" "The technology has evolved considerably since your conditioning," her captive replied. "Modern subjects retain more cognitive flexibility while maintaining absolute loyalty. You and your sister represent outdated models." The words hit Maggie like a revelation. "That's why he wants us both," she breathed. "Not to eliminate us, to study us, to understand why I broke free and why you're breaking down." Anna nodded grimly. Emma was never the primary target. She was bait. He knew her investigation would eventually lead us to each other, force the confrontation he needed to complete his research. Through the living room windows, Maggie could see black SUVs lining her quiet street. Neighbors' curtains twitched with curiosity at the unusual activity, but none would intervene. Mueller's people had perfected the art of operating in plain sight, hiding behind the assumption that ordinary evil could never be this organized, this patient. "The facility is 40 minutes north," Anna said, reading Maggie's thoughts. "Emma is running out of time, and every second we stand here is a second closer to losing her forever." One of the tactical team members stepped forward, his weapon lowered in a gesture of negotiation. "Miss Chen, you're experiencing acute conditioning breakdown. Dr. Mueller can repair the damage, restore your psychological stability, but you need medical intervention before the fracturing becomes permanent." "Like Jesse Owens needed medical intervention." Anna's voice carried 30 years of suppressed rage. "Like all the others who died because Dr. Mueller decided their lives were acceptable losses for his grand experiment?" Jesse Owens died because it was necessary, the man replied with mechanical precision. His death served the larger objective of embedding deep cover assets in American society. The strategic value. Anna's gunshot cut off his words. The bullet shattered a lamp 3 inches from his head, and suddenly everyone was moving. The tactical team dove for cover as Anna shoved her captive toward the front door, using him as a battering ram to clear their path. "The car!" she shouted to Maggie, pointing toward a grey sedan parked at the curb. "Keys in his pocket!" Maggie's hands shook as she fumbled for the keys, while Anna kept their captive between them and the pursuing team. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was relying on her sister's decades of assassination training to save Emma from becoming another version of the same weapon. They reached the sedan as gunfire erupted behind them. Not aimed to kill, Maggie realized. Muller needed them functional for his research. But functional didn't mean uninjured, and she felt glass spray across her neck as the rear window exploded. Anna pushed their captive into the back seat and pressed the gun against his spine. "Drive, Margaret, fast." Maggie's hands found the steering wheel with muscle memory she didn't know she possessed. As they pulled away from her destroyed home, she caught a glimpse of her neighbors watching from their windows, ordinary people witnessing the collision of past and present, never realizing they were seeing the endgame of a war that had been raging in shadows for 80 years. "He's going to kill Emma once he has what he needs from us," Anna said quietly, her programming finally fragmenting beyond repair. "You know that, right? She knows too much, she's too stubborn to be conditioned, and she represents a loose end he can't afford. Then we make sure he doesn't get what he needs," Maggie replied, pressing the accelerator harder. Behind them, the pursuit vehicles were already forming up, but for the first time in 30 years, Maggie felt something she'd forgotten existed. Hope. Anna was broken, maybe irreparably, but she was finally free. And sometimes, Maggie thought, freedom was just another word for dangerous. The research facility sat 40 miles north of civilization, a concrete monument to methodical evil that had operated in plain sight for decades. Maggie killed the engine as they reached the perimeter, her hands steadier than they'd been in 30 years. Behind them, the pursuit vehicles had fallen back. Muller wanted this confrontation to happen on his terms, in his domain. "Emma's in there," Anna whispered, staring at the building where her granddaughter was slowly being transformed into the same kind of weapon she'd been. Somewhere in that place, they're erasing who she is. Their captive stirred in the back seat, blood trickling from where Anna had struck him during the drive. "It's too late," he mumbled through swollen lips. "The conditioning protocols, 18 hours in, neural pathways already restructuring." Anna's face went pale. 18 hours. They'd been chasing shadows while Emma's mind was systematically dismantled and rebuilt according to Muller's specifications. The building's entrance opened, and Dr. Mueller himself emerged, older now, white-haired and fragile-looking, but his eyes still carried the same cold calculation Maggie remembered from classified photographs. He walked toward their car with the confidence of a man who'd spent 8 decades orchestrating other people's destructions. "Margaret," he called through the windshield, his English still tinged with German precision. "Anna, you've come home at last." Anna stepped out first, the gun trained on Muller's chest. Her conditioning might be fragmenting, but her accuracy remained flawless. "Where is she?" "Emma is safe, resting comfortably while the new neural pathways established themselves." Muller's smile was grandfatherly, obscene in its warmth. Such a remarkable girl. Her psychological profile shows exceptional resilience, perfect for the enhanced protocols. "Enhanced how?" Maggie demanded, joining Anna beside the car. "Digital conditioning, neurochemical optimization, genetic predisposition mapping." Muller spoke like he was discussing a favorite hobby. The old methods, Anna's methods, were crude by comparison. Modern subjects retain their personalities while gaining absolute loyalty. They don't even realize they've been modified. Anna's gun hand trembled. "She'll never know. She'll go home thinking she's still herself, but she'll be your weapon forever. Unless," Muller continued conversationally, "you'd prefer to trade places? The reversal process exists, though it's unpleasant, fatal typically, but it would free her mind completely." The offer hung in the air like a physical presence. Anna and Maggie looked at each other, 30 years of separation collapsing in an instant. They both understood what Muller was really offering, the chance to finally balance the scales for Jesse Owens, for all the others, for the decades of living as broken weapons in human disguise. Both of us, Anna said quietly. For her. Anna, no, Maggie started. We're dying anyway, Anna cut her off. You said it yourself. We're weapons that learn to think. How long before the programming reasserts itself? How long before we become what Muller made us again? Mueller nodded approvingly. The facility has been monitoring you both for years. Margaret's conditioning never fully took too much conscious resistance, but it's still there, dormant pathways waiting for activation. Anna's breakdown is accelerating beyond repair. Without intervention, you have perhaps weeks before complete psychological collapse. The truth of it hit Maggie like cold water. The nightmares, the hypervigilance, the way she'd isolated herself from everyone who might matter. She wasn't healing from her conditioning, she was slowly succumbing to it. Show us Emma, Maggie said finally. Let us see that she's really alive, really salvageable. Muller gestured toward the building. Of course. But understand, once you enter the facility, the process becomes irreversible. For all of you. They walked through corridors lined with photographs. American politicians, business leaders, judges, all smiling the same empty smile that Maggie now recognized as conditioning artifacts. 80 years of carefully placed assets, all built on the foundation of what Muller had learned from Anna's successful programming. Emma lay in a medical bed surrounded by monitoring equipment, electrodes attached to her skull, 4 lines snaking into her arms. But she was breathing, and when Maggie touched her hand, Emma's eyes fluttered open with a spark of recognition that meant her granddaughter was still in there, still fighting. "Grandma," Emma whispered, her voice thick from sedation. "I found them. The documents. Jesse Owens." "I know, sweetheart," Maggie said, tears streaming down her face. "I know, and we're going to make it right." Anna stepped up to the other side of the bed, her gun now aimed at the conditioning equipment instead of Muller. "How do we reverse it?" "Simple," Mueller replied, producing a syringe filled with clear liquid. "The same neurochemical process that created the pathways can destroy them, but the brain can't distinguish between artificial and natural neural networks. It destroys everything." Anna took the syringe without hesitation. Maggie grabbed her sister's wrist, but Anna's smile was peaceful for the first time in decades. "Some weapons choose their own targets," Anna said softly, and pressed the needle into her own neck.